It's been a quiet week, Nick. It's been a bit of a mixed bag. I mean,
well, it is mixed news because you told me in opposition you would get the waiting list down, and you have delivered, and that's no mean feat. And I mean this. Congratulations, well done to you and your colleagues. But we're talking when the residents' doctors are on strike again,
absolutely,
Mr. Streeting.
which is obviously going to set us back, and it is frustrating. I mean, yesterday I was able to stand in front of the country and say, the NHS is finally on the road to recovery. Waiting lists are coming down. Ambulance response times are about 10 minutes faster this time this year than this time last year. And patient satisfaction with GPs is on the up. Now, lots done, a lot more to do, but at least we can say it's finally going in the right direction. So when the resident doctors are now out on strike again, not only are they harming patients and causing unnecessary disruption, they're also threatening to set back that recovery, which isn't just bad for patients, it's bad for them, so they're shooting themselves in the foot. And what really frustrates me about this dispute is that it comes after a 28.9% pay rise for resident doctors, the highest in the public sector 2 years in the row. Now, that's not everything they've asked for, obviously, but I think by any estimation, I mean, how many people listening this morning can say they've had a 28.9% pay rise?
But the other aspect is, of course, jobs, isn't it? So let's get a resident doctor in directly to challenge you. Thank you for that. Right. And we'll be talking about... Niraj is in Harrow, and you're through to the Health Secretary. Niraj, go ahead. Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning, Health Secretary. So my question is fairly simple. It's why should we as resident doctors believe that you value us, and why should we take you seriously when the proposals that you've put forward to end industrial action are simply what anybody would expect from a reasonable employer, and that should already be in place? So I mean things like funding our mandatory exams and portfolio and college fees, and ensuring that there are enough training places to make sure that the public have enough consultants in the future. So all of those things, in my opinion, should already be in place. They shouldn't be a bargaining chip to try to end this dispute.
So I'd say a couple of things in response, Niraj. Firstly, you're right, things aren't good enough for resident doctors, but all those things you've listed, they haven't happened before, and I'm proposing that they should happen now. I came in, and one of the very first things that I did as Health Secretary was settle the previous dispute with the previous government, and as a result of decisions I've taken, you and your profession have had a 28.9% pay rise. We've also, on those things you've listed, we've also taken steps to bring forward the availability of training places. So I'm hoping to be able to release an extra 1,000 specialty training places during this application round, additional to the 1,000 that I'd already promised over the coming few years.
This only scratches the surface, Mr. Streeting. The 10-year NHS plan, published, as you all know, in the summer, pledged an extra 1,000 training places by 2028. But there were more than 30,000 applications for 10,000 jobs this year. That's a ratio of 3 to 1.
So 2/3 of those, Nick, are international medical graduates who are applying. And one of the things that I'm doing is putting an end to the absurdity where homegrown talent are having to compete for the same training places on equal terms against people who've trained overseas. I think it's crackers. I think it's unfair to our own doctors. I also think it doesn't help this country with unmanageable levels of net migration. So I'm working as fast as I can on that.
When would that be,
challenge,
Mr. Streeting?
Well, hopefully that will be by 2027, but I'm actually looking at whether I can do something much more urgently. But the challenge there is the law. That's the complexity. But I'm going as fast as I...
Why is it the law? It seems ridiculous. We've got a ratio of 3 to 1. And imagine if you were able to announce to the public, we're just going to put another 15,000 doctors on the books. You would hear the cheering from inside the studio.
Watch this space. The other thing I'd say is...
What do you mean by watch this space?
Well, because I'm going as fast as I can to deal with this issue of international medical graduates. I don't think it's right or fair. The challenge is a legal one. I'm looking at whether there are things I can do more quickly, but it is.
What is this so-called bottleneck? Lastly, on this, there's one doctor, Jacob McSweeney, who's featured in the Daily Mirror today. He talks about there being 20,000 young doctors cannot get permanent jobs because they, quotes, bottleneck in the pipeline.
So this is the training places. So. When you are training to become a doctor and you want to move into a specialty, there are these things called specialty training places. We've got large numbers of doctors coming out of medical school. That is a good thing, but we also want them to be able to go into a wide range of specialties across the NHS, and there aren't sufficient training places. That's why I'm releasing 1,000 more in this application round. If I can move more quickly on that. It's not helped by the fact that these strikes cost us around £250 million every time they're out. So again,
let's get Niraj back in.
This is self-defeating action. But
Niraj,
yes, the more you do this stuff, the less money I have to spend on improving your lives, your working lives, and also patients.
A quick response to the Health Secretary, Niraj.
Of course, if I could come back on that, 2 points. Of course, we all care about patient safety. None of us wants to be on strike. I would rather be at work today. The first thing is, on the things that you have put forward and put on the table, we know that the implementation of these changes would probably be fraught with challenges. For example, the last time we made a settlement with you for exception report reform, the actual implementation of those changes took a very long time, and I think that squandered a lot of goodwill from this government. And on the specialty training places, we do understand UK prioritisation and the international medical graduate issue. Most other countries prioritise their homegrown medical graduates, but what we have been doing is increasing the number of medical schools and increasing the number of doctors who are being pumped out of those medical schools. So regardless of the fact that we're going to stem international migration and stem international medical graduates coming into the NHS, we are still generating far more doctors than there are places. And in addition to that, there are other workforce concerns, for example, physician assistants and ACPs taking doctor jobs. And I think that's something that needs to be talked about a bit more.
And here's the thing. On every single one of those fronts, on pay, on specialty training places, on improvements to conditions, I have been working to address every single one of those issues. These are not the conditions in which people go out on strike. Strike should be a last resort. And I'm sorry, but when you say, I don't want to be out on strike today, yes, you do, because you have made that choice. You have done so having had a 28.9% pay rise, the highest in the public sector 2 years in a row. And on those things that you've just mentioned, you say they take time. Yes, they do, because it is complicated. So to hold patients to ransom and to be out on strike, setting back the NHS because you don't think we're going fast enough and because the leadership of your union are not honest enough that some of this change takes time is extremely irresponsible. It is extremely unnecessary. And the other listeners to this show who have not had a 28.9% pay rise, whose taxes are paying for our National Health Service and who are receiving a substandard service, not least because of the damage that these rounds of industrial action are doing, I think they will be quite shocked, actually, that against the backdrop of a health secretary that wants to work with you, who acknowledges these are challenges and wants to address them, and has given you the biggest pay rise in the public sector 2 years in a row, I think people will be shocked by the BMA's reprehensible behaviour. So don't tell me you don't want to be out on strike, because that's exactly where you are. You made that choice, own it, and own the damage it will do to your patients.
A one-sentence response, Niraj.
I hope that your attitude to this whole industrial action, I hope that you change your attitude on it. Right. You listen to doctors on the ground.
OK, grateful for that.
Well, let me say, Nick, I'll tell you where doctors on the ground are, because it's on the front page of the Times.
We both reached for the same one. Go ahead.
I'll tell you where doctors are. Most junior doctors, it says here, I'd call them resident doctors, do not support today's strike, a poll has revealed.
The BMA say it's a very small poll, Mr. Streeting.
Well, the BMA, I'll tell you what, if the BMA don't agree with the opinion poll, they should have had the courage to put the offer I made to them to their members. I don't believe the BMA are speaking for their members. I think they're speaking for their activists. Those activists are damaging the NHS's recovery, disrupting patients' lives, and they need to own the consequences of their actions.
Finally, is the BMA more a political than it is a medical organisation now, Mr.
Yes, it is no longer a professional association, and it is engaged in cartel-like behaviour.
Let's go to other matters. Niraj, thank you for your work. Welcome to you back to your hospital when you get there. Nora is on the Wirral. Nora, your question to Wes Streeting. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Streeting.
Good morning.
The Michelle Mone situation, and it was commendable that they got a court ruling where the money was going to be paid back, because nobody ever thought that would happen. However, the deadline was the 15th of October. Barrowman's now claiming insolvency, gone out of business, and as he's not going to pay, they owe $122 million for the contract that was faulty, the equipment that was faulty. Plus, they now owe $39 39 million in tax. They didn't even pay tax on it.
Right.
And then how are you going to go about getting it now? Because it's
I think we're talking about total somewhere in the region of £150 million once you allow for interest. Can you give us an update? Are we any closer to getting that cash back, Mr. Streeting?
We're going after it. I have to be careful about what I say, Nick, because if I say too much about what we're doing and how we're doing it, that gives Baroness Mone's legal team some insight that I'd rather they didn't have. Okay. But suffice to say, this is such a disgraceful state of affairs. And ripping off the taxpayer in any circumstances is unacceptable. But thinking about that context of a pandemic, a national emergency, where there were people who were going out to work, putting themselves in harm's way against a deadly virus for which there was no vaccine, no treatment at the time, that kind of selfless action to try and help our country through stands in stark contrast to people who saw an opportunity
Your
to line their
resolve is
own
as hard,
pockets.
as determined as ever
Absolutely.
to get this cash back. You can
I
tell
think
my
it's
listeners
disgraceful.
that.
And honestly, Baroness Mone, I mean, the clue's in the title, a member of the House of Lords, no less. She shouldn't need to be dragged through the courts. She should do the right thing and pay that money back.
Nora, thank you for your call. Daniel's in Golders Green. You're through to Wes Streeting. Go ahead, Daniel. Morning to you.
Morning. Good morning, Nick, and good morning, Health Secretary.
Good morning.
Wes, given rumours of a coup this week, can we still trust the Prime Minister? And does he have control over number 10 Downing Street and his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney?
Yes, I think you can. I mean, look, it's... It was. I did wake up yesterday morning feeling like I'd been in some sort of fever dream, reflecting on this week's events. It was quite bizarre. But this is also a week in which, as we've just been saying, NHS waiting lists are falling.
Now,
and it's
the Prime Minister phoned you, apparently. Was it the night before last?
Yeah, but I'm not telling you anything. Is the answer to this?
Can you just give me his tone? His tone in the conversation.
Oh, look, it's as nice as usual.
But was it mildly apologetic? Sorry you've been dragged through all of this,
I think, to be honest, I think the Prime Minister and I are both in the same boat here of being extremely frustrated because this is a total distraction. And I just sort of say, you know, the season finale of the Traitors is over.
Yep.
And it's time we focused on the news.
I'm glad you know that.
The news is good news this week.
We've had two pictures mocked up, two different looks of Joe Marler, one with the beanie and one with the sort of distinctive Mohican. Which one? We've had you done as both.
You'll have to let me take that away because particularly the one with the beanie, I've now realised how much I look like my little brother.
Quickly, get a picture of the young Streeting. Lastly on that, do you still have confidence in the Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney?
Of course I do. And, you know, this is...
Do you blokes get on?
I've always got on. I get on well with everyone, Nick. I'm a very amenable person, as you know. Even with the BMA, I tend to be more amenable than sometimes.
So the relationship moves on. All the talk is nonsense. But one day you might want to be Prime Minister.
I'm very happy doing the job that I'm doing, to be honest. And
well, we just take you back to 2018.
Why did I bother to? Why did I agree to do this?
Unspun with Matt. This or Matt Ford? Which one is it? Where various Labour MPs were asked who they think would be Prime Minister in 10 years' time.
The leader of the Labour Party. Another Conservative.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn, of course. Anyone but Jeremy Corbyn.
Liz Haig. Bridget Phillipson.
Any old bloody Labour woman I'll take.
Undoubtedly Kemi Badenoch.
Gavin Williamson.
Amber Morris.
Rees-Mogg. How about that?
I think it'd probably be me.
And we concluded with a long list of very big political names. So you knew this all those years ago, did you?
As has often been said, it will be my sense of humour that will ultimately do for me one day. But if you don't back yourself, who will? That's my advice to the kids in my constituency. But no, I mean, there are times where you say things in jest, and then you're sat on a radio programme taking calls, thinking you're going to discuss the serious issues of the day, and Ferrari comes along with a drive-by. Thank you very much. I knew I should stick to Sheila Fogarty. She doesn't do this.
Oh, no, we miss you here.
And I'm not over the fact the other day when I came on this programme, you basically compared me to Alan Carr.
Yes,
I'm not even over that.
No, I haven't had that done up yet. Jason's in Marylebone. You give me an idea now. Jason, you're on the radio. Your question to Wes Streeting.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Hello.
Good morning.
Wes, I had an appointment yesterday to have a blood test, which I was 45 minutes late for due to couldn't park the car in the car park. While sitting waiting, I read the article about Dr. White, I think his name was, who made a horrendous anti-Semitic comment. And as a British Jewish person, I was, believe it or not, I wasn't actually surprised to find out that he hasn't lost his job.
Let me give the background. Martin White is a junior doctor investigated by the General Medical Council. Offensive social media posts from 2023. One said the videos about the Holocaust being a hoax were, quotes, pretty convincing. Another read me. It's important to represent Judaism and Jewish people fairly and respectfully in art, and I apologise in advance for this. Also, me, Jew, banker, goblins. The GMC found that those expressions were throwaway remarks and were not considered serious enough to pose a risk to public protection. Your question now, Jason, to the Health Secretary.
The very simple one. Why is he still in a job?
That's a fair question, and one that I asked when I saw the report. So let me talk about this case and then anti-Semitism in the NHS more broadly. So I saw the same report as you, and that was my immediate gut reaction. In fact, my immediate gut reaction was unrepeatable on radio at this time of the morning. My understanding, having asked the GMC about this case, is that those social media posts were in response to posts that have since been deleted and were not in and of themselves, I understand, and I'm going on the basis of an investigation that took place, not having spoken to the doctor or looked at any of the material myself, but I think the defence was he was mocking what were other inappropriate posts online. Now, I think the reason why this has been such a big story is because we've seen so much online what I would describe as incontrovertible, undeniable and outrageous examples of vile anti-Semitism by people who clearly identify themselves as NHS doctors. And what those people have done is forget not just basic humanity, which all of us should have, but also their professional responsibility to their patients. No one going into the NHS should do so afraid.
No.
And questioning whether they are going to be treated fairly because of who they are, the colour of their skin, their race or their religion.
So did the GMC get this wrong, Mr. Streeting, in your view?
I think it's hard for me to make that judgment without having looked at that material in detail. There are other cases where I think tribunals have got them wrong, and I've been very robust in challenging. But I don't want to go in with, studs up on this case, having not looked at all of the material, and where the GMC offered an explanation that I thought was rational. But that does leave, nonetheless, a lot of Jewish people in our country, and I know because I've, in my own constituency, a very diverse constituency, including a significant Jewish community, people are afraid in the Jewish community that they're going to be treated unfairly or discriminated against because they are Jewish in our National Health Service, and I think that's chilling.
One of your constituents, George, who's in Ilford, is listening. Can Wes assure us he is going to stand again? It was a close call last time. We don't want to lose him. What are his plans?
Yes, I'm standing again in Ilford North. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to give in to the people who tried to take me out. Gaza was a big issue. There were lots of my constituents who felt that the Labour Party hadn't got the position right in advance of the election, and there was a very organised campaign to get me out of the last election. Okay. But Ilford is my home, has been for nearly 20 years now, and I'm very proud to represent my home in Parliament, and I'm certainly not going to give in to the hard left who are trying to take me out.
Rachel in Bexley, would Wes Streeting be supportive if they put up taxes and break their manifesto pledges?
I'm not in favour of breaking manifesto pledges. I think that trust in politics and politicians is low, and it's part of our responsibility to not only rebuild our economy and rebuild our public services, but to rebuild trust in politics itself.
Not you personally. Where does the government get the money from?
The fact that the Chancellor, and we're going on speculation here, but the fact that the Chancellor was reported as even considering breaking manifesto commitments tells you two things. Firstly, the public finances are under real pressure, and secondly, she is fundamentally, unequivocally committed to her fiscal rules. And so, therefore, she's got some invidious choices to make, and she's weighing those up. But I've not spoken to the Chancellor overnight. I've seen the reports this morning that she's no longer planning to increase income tax. I think what the news overnight has shown is that people speculate on the budget, but ultimately you don't know what's in it until the day it's delivered, and that includes the cabinet, by the way. So we will all have to wait and see.
On a related story, before we go back to the calls, the conversation we had with the Jewish patient, we heard this week that NHS staff who care for their patients in their own homes fear some areas have become no-go zones because of the presence of St George's flags. This is health leaders making this warning, saying that some black and Asian staff feel, quotes, deliberately intimidated. When they see the flag of St George, what should they be thinking of, Mr Streeting?
Usually pride. We normally fly our flag in moments of national celebration or on government buildings and schools and places like that. And I'm proud of our flag. I'm proud of the St George's flag. It does get hijacked by racists and the far right from time to time, and I think the best response to that is to reclaim it, because that flag belongs to all of us, not just some of us. But this issue of racism in our society and racism affecting our healthcare workers and patients, whether it's anti-Semitism directed against Jewish people, whether it is people who are black and Asian being abused, assaulted, we've got a level of racism in this country, overt racism of a kind we haven't seen for years. And
what do you mean? Be a bit more specific, if you would.
I've been struck. I've been an elected councillor or MP for the last 15 years. I have not had racism come up on the doorstep of my constituency as often as it has in recent weeks. And people not just saying, I'm really worried about racism, people describing being abused, spat at, shoved, giving racist abuse. And I think we've got a sort of a 70s, 80s style racism that's re-emerged, and we've got to put it back in its box. And government's got a role to play, but all of us have got a role to play. We can't be bystanders to this kind of racism. I thought we'd left this in the past.
What's feeding it? Why the toxicity?
I think it's a number of things. You know, if you look at the history of racism, and I say this by way of explanation rather than excuse. When a country is going through hard times and people are feeling the pinch, that creates fertile ground for resentment towards others and racism. There are legitimate concerns about high levels of migration, whether that's legal migration or indeed the boats coming over. I think that's legitimate, by the way, and I don't criticise people for raising it, and you shouldn't smear people as racist for raising concerns. Right. But nonetheless, there has been an undercurrent of racism attached to that. Okay. So we're not in a great place on this, and I think this country hasn't fundamentally changed. I think this is a decent country, an inclusive country, a respectful country with a live and let live attitude, and long may that continue.
Let's get back to the calls. Many people want to get their opportunity with entering the last 5 or so minutes. Terry's in Cranbrook in Kent. Terry, you're through to the Health Secretary. Go ahead. Morning to you.
Morning, Nick. Morning, Wes.
Good morning.
My question is to you, my son was waiting for 2 years to have an ADHD test, which he has got, and he's confirmed that he has ADHD test, only to be told that the medication he needs may be a 7-month wait. What I want, my question
How old's your boy?
To you...
This is Nick. How old's your boy?
He's 27.
Okay.
And my question to you, Wes, is how long has this been going on for, and when will it be resolved?
Very good question, and I'm really sorry you're in this situation. And without going into details, because it's not fair on my family who are not in public life, but this is an issue quite close to home for me in terms of one of my own relatives, and I can imagine what your son is going through, because ADHD, especially if it's quite severe, can be extremely hard to deal with and manage, and has a serious impact on your mental health and well-being, and that's why this medication is important. I am actively looking at, it's been going on for some time now, to be honest, but I'm actively looking at what we can do to deal with this issue of
I've got to push you a bit more on that. What do you mean by actively looking, Mr. Streeting?
I'm pushing quite hard to make sure that we improve the supply of the medication and the timeliness with which we get it out.
How would you describe the situation currently that you've inherited?
As with many things in the NHS, Nick, it's completely unjustifiable, and it's hard when you hear, in this case, how long people are waiting. It's even worse when you're living with it, or someone you love is living with that. And I mean, in some ways, that's the amazing thing about this job, but it's also the pressure. The amazing thing about this job is I get to do things and make decisions and drive progress that changes people's lives. The pressure is, I know, because the NHS is so important to all of us and affects all of our families, I know what the consequences of failure are, and believe me, that is the thing that drives me more than anything else.
Terry, good luck. Please send, I'm sure, our best wishes to your lad, and I hope the situation resolves itself.
Yeah, and I'd be very happy for Terry to get his details to me via producers, see if I can get
We'll make that
some
happen, Secretary of State. Thank you. Claire's in Belfast. Claire, you're through to Wes Streeting. Go ahead, Claire.
Hello, Wes, and thank you for taking the call. I was just going to ask you, when you first became Health Minister, with regards to the Mounjaro injection, you had decided to roll it out to all obese patients in order to get them back to work. Would that still be something that you would consider viable?
What is your policy? Where are you?
Yeah, so there's really encouraging evidence around these weight loss drugs that they can make an enormous difference to people who really struggle with their weight, have tried over the years to do the right thing, but it's just been insurmountable. So I think there's lots of really encouraging evidence. And I want to see them rolled out more widely across the NHS, not least because I'm very conscious, not least because of conversations we have in the House of Commons tea room where, let's say, one or two of my colleagues are evangelists.
Name names.
Well, actually, I can name names because Carolyn Harris, for example, who's one of my Labour colleagues, she has spoken quite openly and regularly about the huge impact it's had on her well-being and
of your potential scheme, Mr. Streeting.
Well, at the moment, and this is what makes me uncomfortable, at the moment you can get these on private prescription and they're setting you back 200 quid a month. Now, who's got 200 quid a month? Like, OK, people who are on decent salaries, but a lot of people who benefit would not have that sort of money. So now we've got a position where health is linked to wealth. The savings, though, like if you've got people who are having major surgery for things like, you know, having bands fitted, or if people are developing conditions that are going to cost the NHS a fortune, I think this is an investor save and everyone wins.
Investment in Mounjaro equals savings. People get to work, so they pay tax, or they don't cost the NHS.
That's my view. We're trying to drive the price of the drugs down. We're trying to make sure they're available more widely on the NHS. I do just want to flag, though, because I am very encouraged by the evidence, but I do just want to speak directly about the flip side risks of some of this as well. There is a risk that people are accessing these drugs in an unhealthy and unsafe way. As with any drugs, you should use them for specific circumstances, under the direction of qualified medical professionals. What you shouldn't do is think, I'm going to Ibiza, and although I'm skinny, I'm going to have these jabs and I'm going to buy them online, I'm going to make out I'm heavier than I am. That's the sort of thing that really worries me, and all the issues around positive body image and all of the other things that we're
coming to our last minute. You probably are not aware of the LBC story of a woman weighing less than 6 stone, 38 kilos, we called her Caitlin, was, as you've just described, able to purchase a monthly subscription of one of these drugs from the digital health provider Newman. I'm going to pass you a picture. I'd ask you not to let it be seen because we don't have her permission, so I'll pass that to you. She used an AI-generated image to prove her identity, the need for the jab. I was just going to ask, what needs to be done about the ease with which that woman, if you look at the picture, it's truly shocking, with which that, you can do that, you're not on camera. That woman was able to get a weight loss drug.
I mean, these are the cases, I've got goosebumps, these are the cases that really worry me in this context, and we've got to make sure there's a safe prescribing environment. We do have, with the Care Quality Commission, the MHRA, which is the regulator, and we've got enforcement powers. So where people are accessing these drugs inappropriately and with devastating consequences, as we can see, well, I can see in this absolutely awful photo, then action needs to be taken, because prescribers have a responsibility and a duty of care, and if they're failing in that, we won't let them do it.
Final question I have to ask this, it's come in from a lot of people. Does Wes Streeting still retain full confidence in the BBC?
Look, I love the BBC, I really do, but it's not covered itself in glory. It's really let itself down, with not just with this panorama, but I think there are real questions for the corporation more generally about how, like, is it still a public service broadcaster? Why have they gutted local and regional news? Why have they got rid of so many journalists, political journalists, who are holding politicians to account locally and regionally at a time when we're giving more power locally? I do think the BBC's lost its way. I think it's got to, like, it is one of the most trusted news sources in the world. It's an incredible brand. It's got such an amazing history and an amazing present in terms of what it's done for our country, whether that's, you know, the audiences it's drawing in for big shows like Strictly, the amount of traitors-related puns it's given me this week, or indeed, you know, the top-quality journalism and news that it's famous for. So I want to protect the BBC. I want to see it back standing tall with pride, but it's got to get its house in order.